Meeting will now be called to order.
Curtis is here.
Yeah, he's here.
Yeah, he'll be here, but he's a little late.
Roll call for the City Council meeting of March 1st, 2017 at 9 a.m. Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Jones, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon. Please rise for a moment of silent meditation and Pledge of Allegiance.
Mr. President, I would that we, in this time of silent meditation and prayer, we remember those in our community that are less fortunate than we are, locally and globally. Remember those who have lost loved ones since the last time we were in these chambers. And finally, we ask that we receive and are able to grasp the proper information so that we can make the best decisions for the citizens of the city of Erie.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of minutes from the City Council meeting of February 15th, 2017, and bills for payment on February 24th and March 3rd, 2017. Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Jones, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Kwiatkowski.
Yes, sir.
Is there any citizen here for repository sales? Are there any citizens here for repository sales? One more time. Is there any citizens here for repository sales? Hearing none, we will now move on to citizens to be heard. We have two rows.
Yes, Mary Lee is first.
Please give your name and your address.
Good morning. My name is Mary Lee. I'm at 815 Plum Street.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Why I'm here today is because there are a lot of issues facing our EMTA, because there's a lot of issues, especially having a lot of the drivers being laid off. And honestly, they can't afford to have our drivers being laid off because they have families and they have to pay their bills. And if they don't have a job, how can they get our passengers around our local EMTA, our trolleys, if they don't have a job? So what can we do today to really have everyone come together and make a decision? Because honestly, the county and the county, city, and the other third party isn't doing any job. They're not doing good enough. So honestly, if we can come together and make a final choice, then that's what we need to do today. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another one, Rose.
Adam Trott.
Good morning. Adam Trott, 531 West 6th Street. Thank you for giving me a spot on the agenda this morning. I come before you specifically this morning to offer information regarding the PUC approval of the viaduct removal, the McBride viaduct removal. There are several items in that approval letter that caused us great concern. The first item is stating that they want to approve, or they have approved the demolition project without the typical public hearing at the city's request. They said the city specifically asked for them to expedite and not have the public hearing. That to us shows their colors on the fact that they want this thing done and they don't want public input. I will reflect back for a second that all the public hearings on this project were held under the auspices of a $1.2 million demolition project. The change, the upgrade up to $2.3 million, occurred after all public hearings. The CAC was long disbanded after that. The CAC, Mr. Schubert himself, testified here on November 11th or November 5th, 2014, that he felt the CAC was not properly respected in the process. Not only did they seem to not be listened to, but they also didn't get their final wrap-up meeting that they were promised before LRK presented to the public what their recommendation was. These are elements in a long-standing process that has been distorted since the beginning by the city administration, and that causes us great concern. Another concern in the PUC letter, if you read the fact that they had a private meeting on November 17th, and that meeting, I don't know if anybody from City Council was invited to that meeting. It says representatives, this was the invite list. Representatives from the City of Erie, PennDOT, Penelec, Erie Waterworks, National Fuel Gas, Trans Systems, Erie County, the GEIDC, Norfolk Southern Corporation, AT&T, Verizon, Time Warner Cable, or Level 3 Communications. Those were the people that were invited. There was one other invitee. Now, if you look at everybody that I just mentioned, they're public entities or agencies or public utilities, but Accuride was invited, and they attended. The people that attended this meeting, City of Erie, PennDOT, Penelec, Erie Waterworks, National Fuel Gas, Trans Systems, and Accuride. Now, there are a lot of private interests around the viaduct, but Accuride was the only one that was invited. That's very concerning to me. That doesn't fit. The ones that were invited that didn't show up, Erie County, GEIDC, the railroad, AT&T, Verizon, Time Warner Cable, / Level 3 Communications. So it was obvious that this meeting is regarding PUC jurisdiction, which is utilities. But they have a strange invitee on the list that doesn't fit. And other like invitees that would have been similar to Accuride were not invited. So at this private meeting on site, that's where the city said, please expedite this thing, don't have a public hearing. I come before you today because we're under time restraint. We got this letter on February 24th. The letter was dated February 17th, and there's a 20-day appeal window. We are appealing this, and we want the public hearing. We have already lined up a nonprofit that we are affiliated with, Winds of Change. And we're going to, one of the parameters for appealing is to state who do you represent. So we represent Winds of Change, we represent Erie CPR, and we're getting other coalition people to sign on who we represent. I'll be honest with you, City Council is the voice of the people. It would be nice to say, yes, we also represent the City of Erie through City Council. This is not a done deal, this demolition of the viaduct. And there's been so many grave concern maneuvers that we think this is important. And was my 5 minutes up already? Okay, then I'll just close by saying the viaduct is not what's crumbling here. It's the integrity of the due process, the public due process that's been obstructed all the way, and we ask for your help. Thank you.
Mr. President,
yes.
Ask one question. I don't have to go back and forth. Who's appealing? You said we're appealing, or it's being appealed?
You want to step up to the mic, please? Thank you.
So far, the definition will be Winds of Change and an affiliate to them, Erie CPR, which is Erie Connect Plus Respect.
As private organizations from the community appealing the... Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now open up this section of the meeting to citizens be heard. Just with a quick reminder that this is your time, not ours. We will not be addressing you. You will keep it in good taste. We will not have any personal attacks as per council rules. Please keep it in the bounds of good taste. And also, there will be no politics or mention of people running for office. Thank you.
My name is Freda Tepfer. I live at 1738 West 23rd Street in Erie. I have come before you a number of times on the topic of the viaduct. I have spent a lot of time researching how this project developed, some of it preceding my time being actively involved. And I will say that the more I review some of the City Council minutes and YouTubes, that I do respect the passion that some of you have evidenced for the process and for the citizens of Erie, as do I have the same passion. I want to read one of the sections of the project needs that came from page 20 of the project needs section of the LRK report. Pedestrians continue to utilize the viaduct as a means to access the lower and central areas of Erie's east side, mainly due to missing links with the project area. And then they go on to talk about people jumping the barrier on the Bayfront connector, and they summarize it with missing links in pedestrian and cyclist connectivity exists within the surrounding vicinity. And there were a number of other project need criteria. I understand that evaluating the pedestrian use of the viaduct was only a part of a larger issue, and that the concern with people jumping the Bayfront connector was very significant. However, the statement that people were using the viaduct because there were missing links is not true. People were using the viaduct because it worked for them, because of the width, because of the separation from sound, water splash, the shorter route, for so many reasons that were not addressed in the study. The study made what I consider an imaginary comparison between the 6-foot width of the sidewalk of the viaduct and the 8 or 10-foot width of the Bayfront connector. And Bill Pettit told me that was an improvement. In fact, that's an imaginary comparison because everybody using the viaduct, including pictures that LRK took in their study, show the students and everybody else using the entire 22-foot width of the roadway. So that is an example of an imaginary comparison. I think that some of the things that have gone on in this process are symptomatic of the fashion in which the city council in particular, has been given things to act on and approve and review with a short time frame sometimes and with not clear information. I was here at the last council meeting when there was considerable confusion over what people were actually voting on with the viaduct. And I urge the council, because I hear concern and resolve on this council to not be in that position and to send a clear message to the city the administration, that they intend to receive better coordination with their liaisons and timely and more complete information. And I urge you to continue in that resolve. I heard Jessica Haran-Kunchko in a November 2014 council tape have the same concern over some confusion. I will also say that what I read in the comments from CAC members and what I heard from John Schubert on YouTube and what I heard from yourself, Mr. Kwiatkowski, were comments that the CAC members, this is from November 5th, 2014, that members of the CAC felt that they were not heard. And there was no attempt made to have an alternative that allowed for the continuation of the pedestrian-only use of the existing viaduct. No analysis was done. No analysis. There was a, quote, no-build alternative, which was actually not a no-build alternative. It was no building of the Buffalo Street interchange, but it was an action alternative in that it included the demolition of the viaduct. NEPA requires a no-action alternative, but there was no alternative that addressed what it would take to maintain the existing viaduct for pedestrian use only. And the alternatives, I have looked and looked and looked through the study document, and it does not describe the 12th Street crossing from north to south. That's a major hazard to students. Again, we ask you to put the brakes on this process.
Thank you, Frida.
Good morning, Erie City Council.
Name and go ahead.
My name is Jason Brundle, 4131 McClellan Avenue, Erie, Pennsylvania. And I just would like to remind everyone that today is Ash Wednesday, and the Lenten season begins. I have three things that I'd like to quickly just talk about. The first is College Plaza on East 38th Street. Where the sidewalks are, they still have not done any upgrades to their embankments where the sidewalks are, because people that have wheelchairs cannot go up. There's no way of them using it. The ADA has not come by to look at College Plaza, meaning that bikes cannot go up a nice ramp on both of their property on the property. So if you look into College Plaza on East 38th Street on Zimmerman and East 38th Street, where the general post office is, because you can't go up there. Whenever you're on the bike on the post office, in front of the post office, there's a bank. It's nice and smooth, and they have the ADA new upgrades on both ends. But on the College Plaza on their property, it doesn't have. So you can look into that. The second thing is that I was at the community panel, and I'd like to thank everybody that came out to the community panel that WQLN put on last week. And one thing that they addressed was the diversity of the state police. Said that they have a diversity office. And I was wondering if you guys could please look into setting up a diversity task force with all employees and all in the public enforcement, for the fire and for the police and for emergency personnel, and also for people that are employed within City Hall. Because one thing is that the equality index for the city of Erie is 57 out of 100 with the Human Rights Campaign. And one thing is that what I'm addressing is the reaching out to the LGBT community and other minority communities in the city of Erie for the hiring of people of color and also people that are in the LGBT community, because recently you guys just hired white Caucasian heterosexuals, which is fine, but I'd like to have a cross-section of the community. That's another thing. And the other thing is that I'd like to have an update about the Buffalo Road interchange. I know the PennDOT has come through, and you guys came through with the PennDOT on the Buffalo Road new interchange, making it accessible for the other side, from heading from Broad Street north up until 12th. You have that one exit on the right side, but there's no way when you head from 12th Street to Broad Street, there's no way for anybody to get off onto Buffalo Road on that side. So I just want to see what the update is about that Buffalo Road interchange, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.
Good morning, Council. My name is Joseph K. Curlett. I reside at Mill Glen Apartments, Kuntz Road, Mill Creek, Erie, Pennsylvania. I'm waiting for my cheers, like the young lady got. No cheers? Okay. First of all, I want to thank Council President Katowski for setting me straight that there's no politicking going on in City Hall. He informed me that you cannot sign, city council persons cannot sign petitions in this forum. Thank you, President Katowski.
Mr. Collette, please keep your comments on city business, please. This is a forum for city business, and
taking up my time, sir.
Well, I'm sorry, but stay to the task, Mr. Collette.
I know the procedure, sir. I came here today to talk about the responsibilities of the city solicitor. I sent him an email on February 6th. Today is March 1st. I reminded him on January 18th regarding the same February 6th email. Yet, he's so sleepy or busy that he can't respond. But the question was, and I put it before council, and I'd like an answer from the president, since the solicitor is so busy he can't answer a simple email of what is his duties and responsibilities here at council. Generally, he walks out during citizens to be heard. And I've commented on that many times on my visit to city council. So I just want to know why he comes and sits in that chair with his glasses on sometimes and don't say nothing. Why is he here? I really like to know why is he here. Simple as that. Thank you.
Morning, Council.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is McDonald. My property is the 18th and Reed. You know, they spent enough money on that bridge to repair that bridge. I don't know why they want to just tear it down. It don't make sense to me. I don't see where it makes very much sense to you all. But I'm not thinking for y'all. That bayfront, I've watched kids go across there. Somebody's going to get killed right there at 12th in the bayfront. Because kids are kids. They're going to run across, they're going to follow each other, running across there, and somebody's going to come up dead. And when they do, it's going to happen. I can't see it going no other way. Them kids be running behind each other, trying to get across there. That's a dangerous spot. I don't know why that bridge is such a problem. It's not crumbling down. You done spent enough money looking at it that you could have done repaired that bridge. I don't know. I think somebody's getting their pockets padded because it's going to cost a lot of money to tear it down. It don't make sense. And anybody got ham brain upstairs there, they could see it don't make sense. They could have done repaired that bridge. What's the problem? Somebody know what's going on. That 18th Street there. What kind of architect you have planning that out? Now you want to spend some more money. All you want to do is spend money. That's our money. There are other places that money could go. Give it to the school district. They're in bad shape now. I just don't understand y'all's politics. Last time I was here, I was talking about that $30,000 that was given to Joe up there. Those were bad times then. Those were hard times back then. And Joe got $30,000. Joe wasn't worth the 65 or whatever he was getting. He wasn't worth that. He ain't did nothing. What has Joe did since he been up there?
Please, Mr. McDonald, we're trying to keep these meetings.
Wait.
Okay.
We're talking about spending our money.
Right. But try not to get too personal, please.
Well, I don't know no other way I could be, Cass. I want everybody to understand what I'm talking about. I'm not dipping in the dark. I have no skeletons to hide. I want to know what's going on. That's all. If I'm the only one who want to know what's going on. Ain't none, all y'all up there together ain't worth $30,000. Not no raise. Look, what has been done for the peoples? I can't even mention Joe's name, but that's who I'm talking about. You know, spent all that money out there on them parks. Didn't need it. They look worse now than they did before you did anything to them, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. I don't know. And some of y'all up there don't know because you ain't got no business up there. Y'all supposed to be running things. You're not. You're not. You're not doing your job. And it's going to come back and haunt you one day. Y'all want to be mayors? Hey, we need somebody that's got some futuristic ideas. A sixth grader could do a better job than been done. These kids coming along now ain't dumb at all. They're pretty smart. And that's why we got to prepare things for them. But y'all can't see into that, though. All y'all see is somebody getting some money. Money ain't everything. But I promise you this, and I promise you this, because God don't lie. It's going to come back to haunt you. Willie C. and I used to tell you years ago about these kids. What's going to happen when they start killing up each other? They ain't killed nothing out but black kids. They killed that one white one, and Joe jumped in on that. That's the only thing he jumped in on. Y'all better wake up.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald.
Council.
Morning.
My name is Cynthia Glover Muhammad. I'm the publisher of the Erie Metropolitan Black Yellow Pages and also a member of the VIDOC board. And I just wanted to tell you that when I came upon a group of Caucasian people at the bridge, and being that I'm a proponent of entrepreneurism, I stopped and asked them, what are you doing? I think it was Lisa Austin. She said, we're trying to get the bridge restructured. And so I saw their commitment there and the necessity of getting that done, so I joined the effort. In joining the effort, I found that Father McBride, a Catholic priest, after some children had been killed crossing the tracks, went to bat and got that bridge constructed. If no more than that, and I don't know why the Catholic Church isn't backing this up, but he sacrificed that time and attention to get that done, and I think you should think about allowing us to build it. And with the entrepreneurs and the outline of Mr. Trout, all the things that are planned for that would be an asset to the city. Also, I find that living and raising my children on 16th and Holland, right behind Irma Lindsay's home, and now that VIDOC is closed, the underpass there, and then to close the bridge, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I find it to be a containment area, okay? And the things that you're seeing going on with the children, those things are maybe contained to the east side right now, but you will see that grow. It's not something that we're proud of, not something that we want to see happen, but we need to be more embracing of the diversity of the city and build all of the city. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why you would have a dump on one side of the city, which it was on East 18th Street now, and Irma thought about that, about Paul's Towing being put over there. And I just think that you should look at that area and try to build it up and not allow it to be torn down. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other citizens to be heard? Are there any other citizens to be heard? Are there any other citizens to be heard? Hearing none, we'll move on with the meeting. Rose?
Ordinances for final passage. Council file number 15979, official ordinance number 4, 2017. An ordinance closing and vacating an historic alley between Wayne Street and Buffalo Road, parallel with East 18th Street, said alley being 10 feet in width and 724.69 to 731 feet in length diagonally, with reservation of existing utility rights-of-way. By Mrs. Arrington, second by Mr. Witherspoon, the council file bill number 15979, and now known as official file ordinance number 4, 2017, be finally passed by the City Council. Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Jones, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Kwiatkowski. City Council passed official file ordinance number 4, 2017 finally by yeas 7, nays 0. Council file 15980, official ordinance number 5, 2017. An ordinance appropriating the sum of $10,000 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue and providing for the expenditure thereof, federal forfeiture program. By Mr. Winowski, second by Mr. Mursky, the council file ordinance bill number 15980, and now known as Official File Ordinance Number 5, 2017, be finally passed by the City Council. Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Jones, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Kwiatkowski. City Council passed Official File Ordinance Number 5, 2017 finally by yeas 7, nays 0. Council File 15981, Official Ordinance Number 6, 2017, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $4,567.08 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to be received as program income generated by the Enterprise Zone Loan Fund. These funds are to be allocated into the Enterprise Zone accounts. By Mr. Kwiatkowski, seconded by Mr. Mursky, the Council File Ordinance Bill Number 5981, and now known as Official File Ordinance Number 6, 2017, be finally passed by the City Council. Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Jones, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Kwiatkowski. City Council passed Official File Ordinance Number 6, 2017, finally by yeas 7, nays 0. Ordinances for first reading. Council File 15982, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $28,000 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue and providing for the expenditure thereof, Police Drug and Vice Program. By Mr. Winarski, seconded by Mr. Witherspoon, the Council File Ordinance Number 15982, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the City Council. Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Jones, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Kwiatkowski. City Council read and adopt Council File Ordinance Number 15982 by yeas 7, nays 0 on first reading.
Okay.
By Mr. Witherspoon, seconded by Mr. Winarski, resolved by the Council of the City of Erie that the communication received from the City Planning Commission recommending the request for rezoning submitted by Test Enterprise of the subject property as defined on Exhibit A, located on the block bordered by West 2nd Street North, West 3rd Street South, Poplar Street West, and Cherry Street East, consists of 13 city lots for an approximate total of 2.1 acres. The city lot bordering on West 2nd Street is currently zoned WR Waterfront Residential. The remaining 12 city lots bordering West 3rd currently zoned R2 Medium Density Residential. Test Enterprises is requesting the rezoning of these 12 parcels to accommodate the proposed development of a mixed-income apartment community. As part of the development, all 13 lots will be consolidated into one parcel with one zoning designation. Since the West 2nd Street lots are already zoned WR, this request will only change the zoning of those contiguous lots within the same block. Is hereby approved, and the city clerk is authorized and directed to advertise notice of a public hearing to be held before City Council in City Council Chambers, 626 State Street, Erie, on Wednesday, April 5th, 2017, at approximately 9:30 a.m. concerning this request. Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Jones, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Kwiatkowski. This resolution will adopt 7 yeas, nays 0. By Mrs. Arrington, seconded by Mr. Winarski. Resolved by the Council of the City of Erie, pursuant to provisions of zoning ordinance number 80, 2005, and a public hearing held Wednesday, February 15th, 2017 in City Council chambers, the request from Attorney Timothy Zazula, representing Poles Real Estate and Pro Waste Services, Inc., for rezoning of property that is currently classified as M1 light manufacturing and R2 medium density residential to M2 heavy manufacturing, as exhibited or is described in Exhibit A attached, located between 18th and East 18th and East 19th Streets, Wayne Street to Buffalo Road, is hereby approved by the City Council. Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Jones, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Kwiatkowski. And this resolution will pass. Adopt 7 ayes, nay 0. That'll take us into new business.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr.
I'd like
Jones.
to move the balance of the agenda.
It has been moved. Do we have a second?
I'll have a second.
Any separations?
Any separations? Hearing none.
All right, moving the balance of the agenda. Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Jones, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Kwiatkowski. We have a waive rules, Mr. President.
Okay, go ahead, Rose.
All right. Voting on the waive rules. Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Jones, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Kwiatkowski.
Okay, what are we waiving, Rose, first?
No, you have to waive the rules first. Now I'll tell you.
Okay. That's what I like, Rose. Absolute power.
And who said she didn't know how to do her job?
Absolute power.
That's right. Yes, ma'am.
You don't mess with Rose.
Okay.
Mr. Carley?
Rose.
I think you have to tell them what it is because they may decide one way or another.
You may not want to.
Well, they had this to view in caucus room.
Oh, okay. So, maybe
Okay.
the public might want to know.
Well, I'm going to read it right now, but they voted to waive the rules.
Now we vote on no.
Down too.
Small technicality.
All right.
We'll hash that out later. Okay. By Mr. Kwiatkowski, seconded by Mr. Witherspoon. Resolved by the Council of the City of Erie that the City Council approve the request to engage the law firm of Willig, Williams, and Davidson by the City of Erie Water Reserve Investment Fund Committee for legal opinions and reviews. Any discussion?
I think so.
A lot. I don't know who is this? I need some explanation. I just didn't.
Okay, Mr. Witherspoon and I, as members of the Water Reserve, he wasn't at the last meeting, but basically the pension plans have all had to hire a new attorney for pension-related issues. We need an attorney on hand for IRS recertifications, for rewrites, for advice during the year on quadros and other issues involving the pension. As a matter of process, the Water Reserve has always piggybacked onto what the pension plan did. We probably won't use the attorney, so we will not be billed unless we have to. But the attorney will be there on any issues involving possible investments that we would make concerning the Water Reserve, whether they would be legal under the state law and et cetera. So basically, we're hiring a new law firm for the purpose of conducting pension and Water Reserve business on an as-needed basis. And we had a series of interviews whereby we had 6 applicants, which were called down to 4, and this is the firm that won.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Mercer.
So I guess just for clarification, historically the Water Reserve Fund has piggybacked off of the pension.
Well, for sake of economy, we've always found that.
Right. And I guess my question is this a departure from that past practice, or is this the firm that the pensions are using, or is this a different firm?
This will be the firm that each pension plan is, it's already been approved by the aggregate board, and it will now be approved by each board separately. And it'll that's why it came up after our last agenda was already set. Mm-hmm. And so, we probably won't use them as much as the pension fund will.
Right.
But on the rare occasion that we'll be making an investment, let's say, in an area where we have to have some legal advice, because water reserve is different than the pension. We can't always make the same investments.
Yes.
So this firm will be on hand if we need them.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President.
Yes.
So how often, historically, has the Water Reserve Fund had to utilize legal opinion around investment and those type concerns that we're looking and discussing today?
We had to go. You can answer, Teresa. I think it was only one time we used it recently.
Yeah, usually the Water Reserve, when we enter into investments with certain managers, we have contracts to be reviewed.
Right.
So it's very minimal that the Water Reserve will be involved in any kind of legal dispute or anything like that. But for, like you said, we kind of piggyback the funds for convenience sake, really, is what it is. So
what we're saying, Jim, is we would get the same rate as a pension fund. Similar to when we make investments, we buy as a group, and that way we get economies of scale. And I think the last time the Water Reserve really used an attorney was a few years ago when there was the government was pushing some new investment strategy that no one was quite sure if municipalities could get involved in. It was later ruled we could, but at the time we had to make the best decision. We couldn't hold the city hostage by making a bad investment. So we probably will never use it, but if we do, they'll be the appointed firm.
So we always have had a firm available for us. We're just looking to change who that firm is now?
Yes.
And that's what we're looking to do with this.
Right. Because Water Reserve is under the control of council,
right,
all changes have to be made through council.
Okay. So this is just a change of service provider, legal service provider.
Right. The other attorney, he's decided to leave the business and in that area. It's getting pretty tough to find a lot of attorneys in certain areas.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
Yes.
Rose, could you read once again who the law firm is, or who will be our...
The law firm is Willig, Williams, and Davidson.
Out of Erie, or are they local? Or
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Yeah. We only had 5 people apply, and they were the most qualified out of the groups that applied. So.
Had trouble, Jim. Some of them we talked to had nice law firms, but they really didn't have any on-hands experience. And we deal with issues like IRS certification. It's not a time to have a learning curve, okay? And when you need an immediate response, you can't be, providing education on the job. So it does get a little tough.
Just for one other question.
Sure, go ahead.
I guess what do we totally have in our water reserve funds, just so citizens know that why we're following up with something?
There's approximately $10 million in that fund, so in various investments. So, it has a quarterly review, just like the pension funds. It's invested similar to the pension funds, but it's used for capital improvements for the city. So it's a separate fund from the pension funds, but in order to invest it, we have to kind of combine them all together.
Very good.
We were going to give a report later, but thanks for asking. I think we can give one later also.
I've got some information. We did a quarterly review, so.
All right, then, roll call. Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Jones, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Kwiatkowski. This resolution will adopt 7-0. That'll take us to committee reports, Mr. President.
Well, let's see. I'll start with my good friend, Mr. Witherspoon.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon. Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to report on a couple things. A meeting with the Erie Downtown Partnership. There was a board meeting this past week. One of the items they've, of course, announced with their Erie Downtown plan was the idea of having care captains for the 4 districts that they've proposed in the plan. So that's they have recommendations for who those people would be. So they would kind of be the representative for those for the districts. We continue discussion on the facade improvement grants in collaboration with funding from ECRA. So that's going to be occurring soon. They're putting that together. Security cameras, the second round of funding coming through. I reported that before. And then they're also taking another look at the block parties that they sponsored in the past, trying to make them more effective. This past week we had a study session on Erie Refocus, the 5-year action plan. This first phase 1 is called the core strengthening, and the plan was presented that talked about the focus area of West and East Bayfront, both West and East Side Bayfront neighborhoods, 12th Street corridor, and the Bayfront. Took three months of planning to come up with the action plan. And it started. These work started in this area because of the current activity and the amount of investment going on right now in the core area. A lot of the big projects that are being announced lately, and a lot of upcoming funding that's going on. But the goal is to align the priorities, public and private priorities, and also the financing that's currently going on. The phase 2, which will be the neighborhood strengthening and stabilization, that'll start very soon. And we'll focus on our neighborhoods, and there'll be meetings planned for that effort. And lastly, I wanted to give a little note. Two items I've been working on is the urban farming amendments to the ordinance. Those were there was a resolution approved by council, and planning commission has reviewed it, and I believe it's under the review of the solicitor's office currently right now. And I think that's right. Oh, we do have a study session. I'm not sure if anyone's going to mention it this coming Thursday, which is tomorrow, right? It's a fast week.
They seem to be adding up pretty fast.
Yeah. So we have a study session tomorrow evening to talk about the CDBG funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Mr. Mirsky.
Thank you, Mr. President. A few things to report. As liaison to Neighborhood Watch, I attended the Little Italy and Robbins Blast Neighborhood Watch meetings. Little Italy continues to work on the burn grant. Just for administration, at the Little Italy Watch, there were a few concerns that were addressed on 18th Street. The first was the refuse vehicles in the evening driving across 18th Street at a high rate of speed. I think the transfer station is over in that area, and one of the residents that lives on West 18th said, all night because our refuse is in the evening, all night he said they're flying back and forth, and so if we could remind them to follow the speed limit in that area. That was one of the requests, and the other one was, and I'll bring this to engineering. When the road was originally built decades ago, the railroad ties that used to go through that area were not lifted not on 19th, but 18th Street, and they said some of the pavement buckles because of that as those heavy trucks go on there. They requested, and I'll bring this to my colleagues on council, if we could divert the truck traffic to 12th Street or 26th Street and not across 18th Street. But I know Hardinger's over there, so that might be a concern. But those are discussions that we'll have to have moving forward to address those neighborhood issues. I also attended the Police Community Relations Forum at Piper Burley School. It was a very healthy conversation that was had between not just the police and the community, but also other members of law enforcement, the district attorney's office, among others. I want to thank Mrs. Arrington. She spoke on behalf of her organization and on behalf of the children that she works with and the families that she works with. Police community relations are everybody's business in this community, and some of the issues that were addressed were the lack of people coming forward to testify. Also, what was addressed was the behavior of some of our police officers and law enforcement officials, and the perception that the community has towards them. And they talked about some of the successes that they've had in their group in addressing those issues, and it was a raw, honest, and frank conversation. And I think whenever we can have those types of conversations peacefully, and everyone left there, I think, feeling that this is a step in the right direction. And so we need to have more of those conversations. It was very good. I also attended the Knockout Homelessness, which benefits the Erie City Mission, and one of our former employees at the city, R.J. Messenger, was one of the boxers. He worked in the refuse department for many, many years, and it was a good event for a good cause. Homelessness is a big problem, oftentimes associated with drug and alcohol abuse as well, and the City Mission does a good job of addressing those needs in our community. I also attended the Erie Up Community Forum at Wayne School. At that community forum, they introduced the community liaison for Wayne School. 5 of the Erie Public Schools are adopting a community school model, which means they'll be open after school and providing services through agencies to the families of the children that attend those schools, counseling services, after-school tutoring, those types of things. And I think that it's a good program, and I was pleased to be there and support their efforts. And I also wanted to recognize our Erie firefighters. They participated in the 15th annual Hometown Heroes Bowling Tournament, which supported veteran services. So our Erie firefighters, many of our firefighters are veterans, so it was nice to see them out there giving back to the community. And finally, I just wanted to address the Erie schools. The news this week that the state rejected the application for their budget request. And I want to thank this council because one of the recommendations that the state gave in returning the application for the city was that there be more local share of the burden. And this body requested that some of that gaming money be used for our Erie Public Schools. And I think in light of the whole situation where the county schools have now hired an attorney to try to keep mitigate the loss of Erie Public Schools and the kids going out into the county, it makes sense for all of us to come together. That gaming money doesn't belong to any one organization. It belongs to the community. And this is a community issue, a regional issue. And I want to thank this body for that courageous vote. Thank you. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Mr. Mursky. Mr. Winarski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning once again, everyone. Did attend the EMTA meeting this past Monday, and finally, after a lengthy delay, they are going to break ground at the end of the month here, officially starting probably April 1st. So finally, phase 2 of the $60 million project down in the heart of our city is going to get back moving again. Following up with what Dave said with the study session we have with Erie Refocused, some things about that plan that make it a little different than others, a little unique than others, is it's one of those plans that isn't set in stone. They have ideas, they have battle plans, but it's still flexible enough that if changes need to be made, the changes can be made without doing a major overhaul for this plan. It does help revitalize our city, and it comes with grant monies, state, federal, and not looking for our City of Erie taxpayers to foot any of the bill. In a roundabout way, yes, it is our tax dollars when we get the grant money, but it's still something that can be accomplished without putting a heavy burden on the City of Erie. We do have some big investors in the city right now that, we hear, one there, but you figure out what Erie Insurance is doing, Hammett, St. Vincent's, Scott's Harbor Place down there on the Bayfront, EMTA, like I mentioned earlier, and even Velocity Net. There are some multi-million-dollar expansion projects happening that it's good. They believe in the city. We believe in the city. We do need a plan. We got a plan. It's something basic enough but has enough teeth in it where we can move forward to start and get this city moving forward. One other thing I have, there's a young man named Leo. There's a benefit this weekend at Mount Carmel Church, or social hall, both Saturday and Sunday. Sunday's a spaghetti dinner, but Saturday night they're having like a fundraiser and dance. But here's a young guy who's had 5 open-heart surgeries. Now he's battling cancer, but just wanted to put a little tag out there that if nobody's doing anything this weekend, there's a nice benefit we can help with the Tomczak family. So with that, have a good day.
What time is that, Jim? Do you know?
Saturday, it's from 6 to 10, and Sunday, the spaghetti dinner, I guess it's Nunzi's Spaghetti, but that's going to be from 12 to 4 in the social hall.
Thank you. Good family.
Yes, they are.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize for my kind of somber verbal expression this morning. I'm having some breathing issues. A little quiet. I was not able to make the EMTA, the Regional Airport Authority meeting because of continued physical issue, bronchitis or some crazy thing that's happening. But I was a part of the study session that was previously mentioned around Erie Refocus and some of the projects that are happening organically in the community but are being tied in with the efforts of this group. One of the things that stuck out to me is the level of community involvement and city involvement, that it's going to take to make this project become effective and reach its highest potential from a perspective of having a planning person in planning in the city, in City Hall in particular. It's going to take some investment and reinvestment on the city's part to kind of get the right personnel so that we can have internally the things that are necessary to make that help and to work and move forward. It was also encouraging to see all of the community partners that are being a part of the community action team, for lack of, I think that was the phrase, the CAT team, they were looking to formulate. I also did attend the Knockout Homelessness event. It was a great event, and it was nice seeing some of the folks. This is 10 years, I believe. It was the 10th year for this, and the Bizarro family has done tremendous things to help in that area and in a lot of different ways in the community, somewhat unsung at times as well. The community forum that was also previously mentioned, I have the privilege of being a part of that group that's been meeting with community members and city leaders and law enforcement from federal to sheriffs to police to DA in every area in the community, and there's been a lot of positive things that have happened, and a lot of it again doesn't make the media, but there are a lot of underground and organic things that are happening and improving relationships with community and law enforcement, but there's still a long way to go. I think some of the things that came up, it's easy to say we're really good at making kind of flash statements like we need this and we got to have that. But we as elected officials and city leaders, the mayor's office, and the mayor was in attendance there. It was good to see him there that day. And I'll say that, sidebar, when he doesn't show up, we beat him over the head. And then when he does show up, we don't even acknowledge the city mayor in the room. I have a problem with that, but that's a whole nother sidebar. So we've got a lot of work to do. And but I think we've got what it takes in our community to do that. As you can tell, again, I want to really get a little deeper, but I won't. I will end with this, though. And this is trying to keep myself, from coughing. I saw this documentary on Erie. I don't know who all saw it. I saw a clip on Facebook. It made me angry. It made me upset because all we saw was, respectfully, GE minimizing their workforce and the impact that it's having on our community, and that's absolutely true. But you got to be kidding me. That's all we could see. This is a national opportunity to showcase our community, and all we saw was the challenges. not the people working to combat them, not the other organizations and businesses and assets and resources that we have on a national stage. And the best quote that we could get was that Erie's a sinking ship. Who wouldn't want to get off of a sinking ship? Well, you know what? I tell you what, keep us off the national scene if that's the only way you're going to show us and showcase us. Our community is much greater than that. Respectfully, I don't know how many people in that video live in the city or lived in the city. I had a problem with that, and I just wanted to use this forum to say that, again, because our city is much greater than the difficulties we're experiencing. Our community is still a great place to be. Do we have a lot to improve on? Absolutely. Welcome to reality. Welcome to every community. But when we have opportunities to highlight our community, we should not co-sign only negative. Don't bring me a problem without some ideas for solution. And don't have people, respectfully, who don't even live in the city. I understand this is regional, but at the end of the day, I don't care if you live in Mill Creek. Your address does not say Mill Creek, Pennsylvania. It says Erie. And it's important that we recognize, we can be as successful as we choose to be, but whatever we put our energy to is what grows. And so I'd rather put our energy toward the positive things that can help change the negative things in our community. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mrs. Arrington.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, too, went to the Community Policing Forum, and I want to give a shout-out to the police, the citizens, all the organizations that came together to put this on. This is much needed. It's long overdue. But one thing that really stood out in that whole meeting, like Bob said, there was a lot of different issues that was addressed, but there was a 16-year-old young lady who got up and talked about the trauma because of all the violence going on in our community. And it was sad, but it was good that she had the courage to stand up and let people know, no matter who gets shot and killed, it affects our whole community. But I also wanted everybody to know, too, that my organization, MATV, along with Booker T. Washington Center, Family Service, the Achievement Center, we are right now have a trauma coalition team that we are working on a lot of these issues and addressing these issues with the youth. And we'll actually, on March 24th, be doing a breakfast at the Booker T to let everybody know about this program that we want to start to help out our community. A lot of people will be getting invites. It's an awesome coalition. We've been working on this for 6 or 7 months because I know better than a lot of people, because a lot of the kids that I deal with, the youth, they traumatized by what's going on. You know, we got to understand these young men and young women are losing brothers, cousins, best friends. And there is not enough being done to help these youth. We have to help these youth. If we want to stop what's going on with in our community with these young people, we got to come to the table. We got to talk, keep this dialogue open. And I'm glad that this dialogue is open. Also, the next day, I want to give a shout out to Erie Ups for their forum at Wayne School. I went to that too, and I'm glad they're going around in the city to different places having these forums, so everybody, no matter what area you live in, can have some dialogue in what's going on. We have to keep this going. You know, it took us a long time to get to where we are. It's going to take twice as long to get our community back to where it should be. So really a shout out to the whole Erie community for everybody finally coming together and saying enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Arrington. I have my report. I had the pleasure, or maybe the pleasure of listening to some very sad news as I attended, along with Mayor Sinnott, and I was invited as a president of council to attend the recent school board session with Superintendent Badams talking about the Erie School District. As a disclaimer, I was a school director at one time, so I can understand perfectly what they're all going through. and no one's heart breaks more than mine. Some of the solutions that they had to come up with, and I heard people say, well, you just have to tighten your belt. You just have to tell your kids to hang in there. Unless you had to look your daughter in the eye and tell her that tomorrow her high school is gone, or her grade school, or your son, you have no idea what that means. You have no idea what it means to be an alumni of a high school that doesn't exist anymore. It's nice to go to class reunion, but I have no football team to root for. I have no high school to look at, no tradition. So it's not an easy solution what they're going through. And Jay Adams and the school board laid it out as rough as it can be. And somewhere in this great Commonwealth, we're going to have to decide for ourselves just how important our most important asset is. And that's the young kids of the Commonwealth, our future. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to pay for this. All the rhetoric has to go. As Councilman Mirsky said, we here passed, we've been kind of lobbying to get some funds from the gambling to take care of issues in the city and the school district. As the largest represented area, we get no funds directly. I had the unique opportunity of actually being able, and I'll say trap, a couple of legislators and force them to listen to what we're trying to say to them. It's important. It's not about whether we have enough money to balance our budget or that, but we have to start taking care of issues on the ground level here, and it's not being done. And if we don't take care of our school district, don't be surprised if nobody wants to move into the city. Because when I was a young person, the first thing I looked at was the shape of housing, the neighborhoods, and the school district. And I'm proud to say all my kids are educated in the public school system. And that's enough of that one, but we all have to think long and hard about what we're going to do moving forward. This is all part of the comprehensive plan in a different way of looking at it. I had the unique pleasure of attending, along with Jill Beck yesterday, the mayor's assistant, the opening of a brand new business in Erie, the Cobblestone Hotel. What a pleasure it was to talk to a gentleman who I have a lot of respect for, a man I met many years ago by accident, who puts his money where his mouth is. Not only is that hotel going to pay taxes, but he took a chance on putting it in an area with two large hotels, and he's doing very well. I'm glad that is. And listening to his story and listening to what people like him want to do for the community is encouraging. Because if we're going to make this comprehensive plan work, and you read about it in the paper all the time about, council's not working fast enough, we're not having this. Well, you know what? There's a $650 million price tag put on that plan. So do the math with 10 years, and you see what a daunting task is. And it's a pleasure to see people like Mr. Kennedy, and I had the pleasure of talking to Mr. Rankin, who is one of the leading officers at Country Fair. And, of course, I like to push the city a lot. I said, you could always use more of your businesses within the city boundary. While I am an advocate for regionalism, I'm also an advocate for my city, which we need a little shot in the arm. I was going to talk about the O&E, the Aggregate Board, and the Water Reserve, but I'll leave that for our controller. She does such a good job, and we meet together all the time anyway, so, she can wrap up that. Mr. Jones brought up an interesting thing. We had the study session here a few days ago in which we're talking about the future of the city. And a lot of things are being done under the surface that the public doesn't see. I like to call it the submarine effect. Everybody was looking for the battleship on top of the water, but it's the little submarines under the water that are doing all the work. And there's a lot of people working hard on this comprehensive plan, and there are a lot of steps. And I agree with Mr. Jones. It's nothing more depressing than when you hear about a CBS News story or some of our own citizens actually getting down on the area. It's easy when you live outside the city limits and you think, your world is great and everything, but wake up to reality that we are all interconnected, that this is one large community. And at a time when I was a young man, it was the city who was living at the top of the heap and was helping out the suburbs from time to time, and we were the ones that are making, all those sacrifices. Now it's the other shoes on the other foot. Nobody wants anything to do with us. Well, that's not the way it has to be. We're all in this together. This is one giant mess that was created by a lot of factors. And no one can run and hide and do what they want to do. We have to start working together as a community. But we also have to remember that the city cannot be allowed to collapse, that we do need help, that we are no longer, the economic generator alone. And it disturbs me when people are more than happy to come in here, take advantage of our educational facilities, take advantage of our civic center, take advantage of the numerous free events that are, and then criticize them because, the talent level is not of a sufficient attitude or, I'm proud of my city. I'm proud of people. When I look at Mrs. Arrington, puts her money where her mouth is every week, and actually, lost a son and doing something about it. Mr. Witherspoon, who sometimes gets criticized, but you know what? He's putting young men with nothing to do, giving them something to do in the summer months. They're playing basketball. They're off the streets. And this community's loaded with a lot of stories like that. The Mr. Kennedys, the Mr. Griffiths, the Mr. Scotts that are making investments. And we have to quit downtrodden this community and start, piping up our positive assets. And with that, I'll get off my soapbox here. But I'd like to say, I want to send a goodwill wishes out to Cheryl Fry, one of our police officers who was hurt recently. A marvelous woman. I had the pleasure of dealing with her on some local issues, and I hope she's healing well and getting better. Look forward to having her back. With that, I'll turn this over to our controller.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Investment Committee, Aggregate Board, and Water Reserve all met last week to review the funds, and they're all doing well. So there were 2 recommendations made, one to hire the attorney from Willig, Williams, and Davidson for legal matters, and they're also going to be consolidating the fixed income strategy to simplify the asset class and to make liquidity easier in case the funds need some money for some future needs. They also, to let you know, the quarter ended in the 21st ranking among all public funds, which was pretty good considering the way the market's been. And the overall return was about 6.3% for the year. So right now, currently today, I checked, the funds are valued at $240.6 million, which is the highest amount since I've been controller, which is good to see. And as a result, it's because of the market, the way it's going now. So hopefully that continues. And the next meeting will be in May for the Water Reserve and the Aggregate Board. So that's it.
Thank you for all the hard work.
Thanks.
Mrs. Beck?
Thank you, Council President. It was my pleasure to attend the ribbon cutting yesterday along with you and some other folks from the community. The investment that Mr. Kennedy has made in our bayfront is very important part of the comprehensive plan. Just a small portion of the puzzle to invest in that bayfront. What they've been able to do with that unusual piece of land, that unusual plot of land, and make the most of every inch of the property is pretty impressive. Erie Insurance is going to be breaking ground on their new building next week. Of course, St. Vincent and UPMC Hammett are going to be investing in our community as well. So it's nice to see that good things are happening and moving Erie forward, which is what we need. Thank you.
Mr. Carley, would you like that word?
It's 54 degrees, showers, so Mr. Witherspoon, wear your coat. Other than that, I don't have a report.
With that, do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, second. All in favor? Aye. Adjourned, meeting adjourned.
City Council adjourns at 10:18. Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mrs. Arrington, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Jones, Mr. Gorski,
Not, don't, yeah.